Woman's voice, trembling. 911 call, please. She's bleeding everywhere. The baby, oh God, the baby. Narrator. The night police kicked down the door of apartment 4B. They found a scene that would haunt them for years. A pregnant woman, 5 gunshot wounds, and a family dog that wouldn't stop barking at the wrong person. But here's what nobody saw coming. The killer wasn't a stranger. The victim wasn't innocent. And the husband? He knew everything. Welcome to True Crime Files HQ. Before we dive into tonight's story, I want to say thank you to every single subscriber watching this right now. You're the reason we can keep bringing these stories to light. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because what you're about to hear will change how you see the people closest to you. Now, let's begin. The neighbors called them the golden couple. You know the type. The kind of people who make you question your own life choices just by existing. He wore tailored suits that cost more than most people's rent. She had that effortless elegance, the kind you can't fake, the kind that makes other women both admire and resent you. Their apartment building in downtown was the kind of place where security nodded at you by name, and the lobby smelled like imported flowers. 15th floor, corner unit, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city like they owned every light below. But if you looked close enough, if you were paying attention, you'd notice something strange. She never smiled in the elevator. He never let her walk ahead. In that beautiful corner apartment, the curtains were always drawn. Because here's what most people don't understand. The shiniest surface often hides the deepest cracks. We scroll through perfect Instagram lives, perfect relationships, perfect families, and we forget that we're only seeing what someone wants us to see. Remember that. It was early September when everything started unraveling. The woman, let's call her Nia, sat on her balcony at 2:47 a.m. Again, third night in a row. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, 9 months pregnant, whispering to the life inside her like it was the only witness she could trust. Just hold on, she breathed into the darkness. Mommy just needs one more night. One more night of what? That's the question that would haunt investigators later. Because in exactly 14 hours, Nia would be dead. But right now, in this moment, she's still alive. Still hoping. Still believing that maybe, just maybe, she can outrun the storm she sees coming. The city stretched out before her, a million tiny lights representing a million tiny lives. People sleeping peacefully. People who didn't know that sometimes the most dangerous place you can be is in your own home, with your own family. Behind her, through the sliding glass door, her husband Derek slept, or pretended to sleep. With him, Nia had learned you could never really tell. Derek wasn't violent in the obvious ways. He never raised his fist, never screamed. That's what made him so terrifying. His control was surgical. He monitored her phone for her safety. He chose her clothes because he had better taste. He decided which friend she could see because he knew who was really good for her. And somehow, over 3 years of marriage, Nia had let herself believe this was love. That real love meant someone caring enough to guide you, shape you, protect you from your own bad decisions. Until the day she realized she'd become a ghost in her own life. If you've ever felt trapped by someone who claimed to love you, drop a comment below. You're not alone. And if this story is already hitting different, subscribe, because it's about to get darker. Nia's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, her childhood best friend, the only person from her before life that Derek hadn't managed to erase. Marcus, you still up? And I always. Marcus, bad night. She stared at those 2 words for a long time. How do you explain to someone that you're drowning in a life everyone else thinks is perfect? And I'm fine. Marcus, liar. She smiled despite herself. Marcus always knew. They'd grown up 3 houses apart, climbed the same trees, survived the same terrible middle school years. He'd been there when her father walked out. She'd been there when his mother got sick. They were the kind of friends who didn't need to explain themselves because they'd already lived through each other's worst moments. But this was different. N.I.A., can you meet tomorrow? Early. Before he wakes up. Marcus. Name the place. N.I.A., the cafe. 6 a.m. Marcus. I'll be there. What Nia didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Derek was awake. Had been awake for the past 20 minutes, watching her through the reflection in the bedroom mirror. Watching her text someone at 3 a.m. And Derek was the kind of man who remembered everything. The cafe was one of those hole-in-the-wall places that tourists never found. Chipped mugs, uneven tables, coffee that tasted like it had been brewed in 1987. Nia loved it. It was real, imperfect, the opposite of everything her life had become. Marcus was already there when she arrived, sitting in the back corner, 2 cups of coffee waiting. He looked up when she walked in, and his expression shifted immediately. Jesus, Nia, you look exhausted. Good morning to you too. She slid into the booth, grateful for the worn leather seat and the anonymity of the early morning crowd. He pushed the coffee toward her. Talk to me. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Nia let the words come. She told him about the constant surveillance, the way Derek needed to know where she was every moment of every day, the way he'd slowly isolated her from everyone who cared about her, always with reasonable explanations, always making it seem like he was the rational one and she was being dramatic. He makes me feel crazy, she whispered, like I'm imagining it all, like I should be grateful. Marcus's jaw tightened. You need to leave. I can't. I'm 9 months pregnant. Marcus, where am I supposed to go? Anywhere. My place. Your mom's. A hotel. I don't care. Anywhere is safer than. You don't understand. Her voice cracked. He'll find me. He always finds me. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Nia glanced toward the window, half expecting to see Derek's car pulling up outside. But what she didn't notice was the woman sitting 3 tables away, hidden behind a newspaper, listening to every word. Derek's mother. If you want to understand what happened next, you need to understand Mrs. Bryant. She was old money, the kind of woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and judged you for using the wrong fork at dinner. She'd raised Derek alone after his father died, poured everything into making him successful, respectable, perfect. And then Nia came along. In Mrs. Bryant's eyes, Nia was never good enough. Wrong background, wrong education, wrong everything. But Derek had insisted, and Mrs. Bryant had learned to tolerate her daughter-in-law with the kind of cold politeness that feels worse than outright hatred. But tolerance isn't the same as acceptance. And when Mrs. Bryant started noticing things, late-night texts, secretive phone calls, the way Nia's eyes lit up when she talked about Marcus, she began to suspect something that would shatter her carefully constructed world. She followed Nia to the cafe that morning, sat 3 tables away, listened to every word. And when she heard Nia say, "He'll find me. He always finds me," something inside Mrs. Bryant snapped. Because in her mind, Nia wasn't a victim. She was a threat, a woman trying to destroy her son's reputation, embarrass their family, take away the perfect life Mrs. Bryant had sacrificed everything to build. Moral integration. Here's the thing about perspective. We all believe we're the hero of our own story. Mrs. Bryant genuinely thought she was protecting her family. Nia genuinely thought she was protecting her baby. Derek genuinely thought he was protecting his marriage. And that's how tragedies happen, when everyone believes they're right. But there was one piece of information Mrs. Bryant didn't have yet. One secret that would turn everything from complicated to catastrophic. That night, back in their apartment, Derek poured himself a drink and watched Nia move around the kitchen, preparing dinner like nothing was wrong. "You were out early this morning," he said casually. Nia's hand froze on the refrigerator door. "Just needed some air. At 6 a.m., the baby kept me up. Walking helps." Derek swirled his drink, ice clinking against glass. "You walked to that cafe on 5th Street, the one I specifically asked you not to go to because it's in a rough neighborhood." Her blood went cold. He knew. Of course he knew. I was careful. You met Marcus there. It wasn't a question. The air in the apartment shifted, grew heavier, dangerous. Nia could feel her pulse in her throat. He's my friend, Derek. He's a man who's in love with you. That's ridiculous. Is it? Derek stood up slowly, deliberately. He didn't move toward her. Didn't need to. His presence alone filled the room. Is that why you text him at 3 a.m.? Why you delete your call logs? Why you sneak out before sunrise? I delete them because you go through my phone. The words exploded out of her before she could stop them. The truth she'd been swallowing for 3 years, finally breaking free. Derek smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. I go through your phone, he said softly, because my wife is lying to me. And in that moment, Nia realized something terrifying. He didn't just suspect. He knew, or at least he thought he did. But what Derek didn't know, what nobody knew except Nia and Marcus, was that the baby she was carrying, the child due in less than 2 weeks, the tiny life she'd been protecting with every breath, wasn't Derek's. 3 months earlier, during one of their worst fights, Nia had left, packed a bag, drove to Marcus's apartment, broke down crying in his doorway. And in a moment of vulnerability, exhaustion, and desperation for something that felt like actual love, they'd made a mistake that was now 8 pounds and kicking inside her. The secret she'd been carrying was about to be born into the world, and Derek was starting to suspect that 24 hours before her death, Nia made a decision. She would tell the truth, not because she wanted to, not because she thought it would fix anything, but because carrying this secret felt like drowning slowly, and at least the truth, even if it destroyed her, would let her breathe one last time before she went under. The problem was timing. Derek had left for a business trip, 3 days in Chicago, back on Friday, which meant Nia had a window, a small, fragile window, to figure out her next move. But windows don't stay open forever, and Derek's mother was still watching. That morning, Mrs. Bryant showed up unannounced. She did that sometimes, used her spare key, walked into their apartment like she owned it, which in a way, she did. She'd paid for the down payment. After all, her son's success was her success. "Good morning, dear," Mrs. Bryant said, setting shopping bags on the kitchen counter. "I brought some things for the baby." Nia's stomach tightened. She'd been standing in the bathroom, staring at her phone, at Marcus's last message. "Tell him, before it's too late." "That's thoughtful. Thank you." Mrs. Bryant began unpacking items methodically. Tiny clothes, soft blankets, a silver rattle that probably cost more than Nia's first car. "Derek mentioned you've been stressed," Mrs. Bryant continued, not looking up. "He's worried about you." "I'm fine. Are you?" Now she looked up. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. "Because stress isn't good for the baby. Neither is distraction." The word hung in the air like a threat. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" Mrs. Bryant smiled thinly. "I saw you. At that cafe. With that boy." Nia's heart stopped. "Marcus is an old friend. An old friend who looks at you like you're the only woman in the world." Mrs. Bryant stepped closer. "Does my son know about these early morning meetings?" "There's nothing to know." "Good." The older woman's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Because if there was something to know, if my son's wife were doing something that could embarrass this family, hurt his reputation, destroy everything I've built, well, that would be very unfortunate." The threat wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. Mrs. Bryant gathered her purse, heading toward the door. Then she paused, turned back. "Oh, and Nia, that friend of yours should be careful. Accidents happen to people who insert themselves into other people's marriages." The door closed softly behind her, and Nia realized with horrifying clarity she wasn't just in danger. Marcus was too. Comment below if you've ever been threatened by someone who smiled while doing it. That's real horror. Not jump scares, just the cold realization that someone wants you gone. If you're not subscribed yet, do it now. What happens next is going to break your heart. Nia called Marcus immediately. "Don't come over. Don't text. Don't call. She knows. Slow down, who knows? His mother. She followed us. Marcus, she threatened you. There was silence on the other end. Then, I'm coming over. No, I'm already in my car. Marcus, please. I'm not letting you handle this alone. 20 minutes later, he was at her door. They sat in the living room, curtains drawn, speaking in whispers like the walls had ears. Maybe they did. With Derek, you could never be sure. You need to leave, Marcus said for the 100th time. Today, right now, and go where? I told you, my place. We'll figure it out. He'll find me. Then we'll keep moving. For how long, Marcus? Forever? I can't run forever. I'm about to have a baby. His baby. She stopped herself. The lie had become so automatic, she almost believed it herself. Marcus caught the hesitation. Nia, whose baby is it? The question she'd been avoiding. The truth she'd been burying. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the moment he understood. Oh God, he whispered. Nia, please tell me I'm wrong. She couldn't, because he wasn't wrong. The truth sat between them like a living thing, breathing, growing, impossible to ignore. How long have you known? Marcus asked quietly. Since the ultrasound. The dates didn't match what I told Derek. I've been lying about how far along I am. Does he suspect? I don't know. Maybe. He keeps asking questions about the due date, why the baby seems bigger than expected. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, pacing. This changes everything. I know. No. I mean, this makes you more vulnerable. If he finds out, he'll kill me. The words came out flat, factual, not dramatic, just true. Marcus stopped pacing. What? You don't know him like I do. The control, the surveillance, it's not about love. It's about ownership. And if he finds out this baby isn't his. She shook her head. I've seen what happens when you take something from Derek. He doesn't forgive. He destroys. Then we're leaving. Tonight. Marcus. Tonight, Nia. I'm not negotiating. But they've forgotten one crucial detail. In that apartment building, with those expensive security systems and fancy cameras, someone was always watching. And Derek's mother had eyes everywhere. Here's where the story takes a turn that nobody expected. The Bryants had a dog, a golden retriever named Buddy. 8 years old, gentle as they come, the kind of dog that wagged at everyone. Except lately, something had changed. 2 weeks earlier, Buddy had started behaving strangely around Mrs. Bryant, growling when she entered the apartment, hiding when she tried to pet him, acting like she was a threat instead of family. Everyone assumed the dog was stressed about the pregnancy, picking up on Nia's anxiety. But dogs don't lie. Dogs know things humans miss. And Buddy knew that Mrs. Bryant had been coming to the apartment when no one was home. Knew she'd been going through Nia's things. Knew she'd installed cameras in places Derek hadn't even thought to look. That day, when Mrs. Bryant showed up with baby gifts, Buddy had barked for 15 minutes straight. Wouldn't stop until Mrs. Bryant left. What's wrong with that animal? She'd muttered, disgusted. What was wrong was that Buddy could smell something humans couldn't. The scent of hatred hiding behind a smile. That night, Nia packed a bag. Just essentials. Clothes for her and the baby. Important documents. Some cash she'd been hiding from Derek for months. Marcus was supposed to pick her up at midnight, when the building's security guard took his break. They had a plan. Not a great plan, but a plan. But at 11:47 p.m., someone knocked on the door. Nia froze. Marcus wasn't supposed to come up. They'd agreed he'd wait in the car. She approached the door slowly, looked through the peephole. It was Mrs. Bryant. I know you're in there, dear, came the sickly sweet voice. We need to talk. Mother to mother. Nia's hand hovered over the doorknob. Every instinct screamed, don't open it. But Mrs. Bryant had a key. If Nia didn't open the door, she'd just let herself in. At least this way, Nia could control the situation. Or so she thought. She opened the door. Mrs. Bryant stood there, perfectly composed, perfectly put together. But her eyes were cold, going somewhere. She glanced past Nia to the bag sitting by the couch. Just organizing some things. At midnight, I couldn't sleep. Mrs. Bryant stepped inside without invitation, closed the door behind her, locked it. Let's stop pretending, the older woman said softly. I know about you and that boy. I know about your little plan to run away. I know about the baby. Nia's blood turned to ice. What? Did you really think I wouldn't check? I have friends, dear. Friends in medical offices. Friends who can access records. Mrs. Bryant smiled. The due date you gave my son? The one you've been lying about for months? It doesn't match your actual ultrasound. The room tilted, which means either you got pregnant before you told Derek. Mrs. Bryant leaned in close. Or the baby isn't his at all. You're going to leave my son, Mrs. Bryant continued, her voice eerily calm. You're going to run off with your little boyfriend, take the baby, who may or may not even be a Bryant, and destroy everything I've built. That's not. Don't lie to me. The facade cracked. Pure rage flashed across Mrs. Bryant's face. I gave up everything for that boy. Everything. Do you know what it's like to raise a child alone? To sacrifice your entire life to make sure he becomes someone important. I'm not trying to take anything from him. You're trying to take everything. His reputation, his name, his future. Do you have any idea what people will say when they find out? When they learn his wife was sleeping around, got pregnant by another man, try to pass it off as his. I never want to hurt anyone. But you did. You hurt my son. You hurt this family. And now, Mrs. Bryant's hand moved to her purse. Later, investigators would find it strange that a 62-year-old woman carried a gun. But Mrs. Bryant wasn't just any woman. She'd grown up in a different generation, a different world. She believed in protecting what was hers. And right now, she believed she was protecting her son. This could have been simple, Mrs. Bryant said, pulling out the weapon. You could have been a good wife. Could have given my son a real child, a real family. But instead, you chose to be selfish. Nia backed toward the balcony. Please, think about what you're doing. I am thinking. I'm thinking about my grandchild, who might not even be my grandchild. I'm thinking about my son's reputation. I'm thinking about everything you're about to destroy. Shooting me won't fix anything. No, but it will stop you from ruining him. And in Mrs. Bryant's mind, twisted as it was, that logic made perfect sense. This was a murder. This was protection. This is what happens when love turns toxic. When protection becomes possession. When someone decides that their version of family is more important than actual human life. What happened next unfolded in seconds, but felt like hours. Buddy started barking. Loud, desperate. The kind of bark that says danger, danger, danger. Nia tried to reason. If you do this, they'll know it was you. The cameras, the neighbors, Marcus. Marcus. Mrs. Bryant laughed bitterly. Marcus is exactly who they'll suspect. A man in love with another man's wife, with motive, opportunity, access to the building. By the time police finish investigating him, I'll be long gone from suspicion. She thought this through, planned it. This was an impulse. This was premeditated. And Derek, Nia's voice cracked. What about your son? He'll grieve. He'll move on. He'll find someone worthy of the Bryant name. The gun raised. Nia's hand moved to her belly, protecting the life inside her one last time. And just as Mrs. Bryant's finger tightened on the trigger, the door burst open. Marcus. He'd heard the voices, heard Buddy's barking, knew something was wrong. For a split second, everyone froze. Then chaos. Marcus lunged. Mrs. Bryant turned. The gun went off once, twice, 3 times. Nia felt the first bullet like fire in her shoulder. The second in her side. The third. The world went dark. When police arrived 14 minutes later, here's what they found. Nia on the floor, bleeding, unconscious. Marcus kneeling beside her, covered in her blood, screaming for help. Mrs. Bryant standing near the balcony door, gun still in hand, staring at what she'd done like she couldn't quite believe it herself. And Buddy, loyal, protective Buddy, standing between Nia and Mrs. Bryant, teeth bared, still trying to protect the woman who'd shown him kindness. The EMTs worked fast. They had to deliver the baby via emergency C-section right there in the apartment. A little girl, 6 pounds, 4 ounces alive. But Nia didn't make it. By the time they got her to the hospital, she'd lost too much blood. The last thing she'd whisper to Marcus, barely conscious. Tell her I tried. But here's where the story gets even darker. Because while Mrs. Bryant was arrested that night, caught literally holding the smoking gun, someone else was working behind the scenes. Derek. He'd gotten a call in Chicago. Flew home immediately. Arrived at the police station with expensive lawyers and a plan. His plan wasn't to protect his mother. It was to destroy Marcus. Because here's what Nia never knew. Derek had suspected the affair for weeks. Had hired a private investigator. Had collected evidence, texts, photos. And now, with his wife dead and his mother arrested, Derek saw an opportunity. If he couldn't have Nia, he'd make sure Marcus lost everything too. Even if it meant protecting the woman who'd murdered his wife. Even if it meant letting his own mother walk free while an innocent man went to prison. The next 2 chapters reveal how Derek manipulated evidence, how the investigation nearly sent the wrong person to prison, and the one piece of evidence no one expected, the truth about the baby's DNA. Subscribe now, because what comes next is going to leave you speechless. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it. Sometimes the people who need to escape are the ones who look like they have it all together. Drop a comment. Have you ever known someone living a double life? Someone who looked perfect on the outside, but was suffering in silence. Derek received the call at 1:43 a.m. Not from the police, not from the hospital, from his mother. She used her one phone call not to get a lawyer, not to explain herself, but to give him instructions. Listen carefully. Mrs. Bryant's voice was steady, calculated. I need you to do exactly what I say. The boy, Marcus, he was there. His fingerprints are everywhere. His DNA is all over her. This can work in our favor. Derek stood in his Chicago hotel room, staring out at the city lights, processing what his mother had just told him. His wife was dead. His mother had killed her. And somehow, impossibly, she was already planning how to get away with it. Are you listening to me? Mrs. Bryant pressed. You need to get home. You need to control this narrative before it controls us. You shot her. His voice was hollow. You killed my wife. I protected you. That baby, do you understand? That baby wasn't yours. She was leaving you. She was going to embarrass this entire family. The words hung between them like poison. Part of Derek had suspected. The late-night texts. The way Nia pulled away from him. The dates that didn't quite add up. But suspecting and knowing are 2 different things. How do you know? He asked quietly. I checked her medical records. The conception date. It was during that week in March when you were in Singapore. Remember? The week she said she was visiting her mother. He remembered. And suddenly, everything made sense. The betrayal. The lies. The secret she'd been carrying. So what do? Derek's voice changed. Hardened. Because if there's one thing the Bryants knew how to do, it was survive. We make sure Marcus takes the fall. Detective Lisa Reeves arrived at the apartment at 2:17 a.m. 23 years on the force. She'd seen everything. Murder-suicides. Domestic violence. Drug deals gone wrong. But walking into apartment 4B that night, something fell off immediately. The scene was too clean. Or rather, too messy in the wrong ways. Mrs. Bryant sat calmly in a chair near the window, hands folded, still holding the gun, waiting, like she wanted to be caught. Marcus was on his knees beside Nia's body, hands covered in blood, sobbing uncontrollably. Exactly where you'd expect a guilty person to be. The EMTs had already taken a baby, alive, thankfully, but Nia was gone. 5 shots. 3 had hit their mark. Detective. Officer Garcia approached, keeping his voice low. The older woman's claiming self-defense. Says the victim and the man were planning to kill her son, that she walked in on them plotting. And the man says the older woman did it. Says he was trying to stop her. Classic he said, she said. Except one of them was still holding the murder weapon. But Detective Reeves had learned long ago, the obvious answer isn't always the right one. She walked slowly through the apartment, taking in details. A packed bag by the couch. Passport. Cash. Clothes for a newborn. Nia had been planning to run. Text messages on her phone. Multiple conversations with Marcus. Planning. Coordinating. Nothing explicitly romantic, but intimate enough to suggest something more than friendship. And then there were the security cameras. The building had them in every hallway. The lobby. The parking garage. Detective Reeves pulled up the footage. 11:47 p.m. Mrs. Bryant enters the building, goes up to the 15th floor. 11:52 p.m. Marcus arrives, parks his car, waits. 12:03 a.m. Marcus enters the building, heads upstairs. 12:08 a.m. Gunshots. Timeline matched both stories. But something else caught her attention. Mrs. Bryant had entered using a key. No hesitation. Like she belonged there. Marcus had been buzzed up by someone, presumably Nia, and looked anxious the entire time. Body language matters. In investigations, we often see what we want to see. The grieving best friend covered in blood looks guilty. The composed older woman looks like a victim. But Detective Reeves knew better than to trust appearances. Sometimes the calmest person in the room is the most dangerous. Derek arrived at the precinct at 6:14 a.m., flanked by two lawyers. Three-piece suit despite the early hour. Perfectly composed. The grieving husband putting on a brave face. Detective Reeves watched him through the two-way mirror, studying his body language. No tears. No trembling. Just cold, calculated control. "Mr. Bryant," she said, entering the interrogation room. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Detective. I just want to understand what happened to my wife." "We all do. Can you walk me through your relationship with the victim?" She was everything to me. We've been married 3 years. She was 9 months pregnant with our first child. Were there any problems in the marriage?" Derek paused, choosing his words carefully. Every marriage has its challenges. Nia had been stressed about the pregnancy, worried about becoming a mother. I tried to support her, but she started pulling away. Pulling away how? Spending more time with Marcus, her childhood friend. I didn't think much of it at first. They'd known each other forever. But then what? I found messages. Not explicit, but intimate. Late-night conversations. Plans to meet in secret. He looked down. I confronted her about it 2 weeks ago. She denied everything. Said I was being paranoid. "Were you?" "I hire a private investigator." Derek slid a folder across the table. "These are photos from the past month. Nia and Marcus meeting at cafes, parks, his apartment. Times when she told me she was somewhere else." Detective Reeves opened the folder. The photos were damning. Nia and Marcus sitting close in a coffee shop, walking together in a park, his arm around her shoulder, entering his apartment building at 11 p.m. "When was this taken?" She pointed to the apartment photo. 3 weeks ago. She told me she was at a prenatal yoga class. "Did you ever confront Marcus?" "No. I wanted to handle it delicately, for the baby's sake." "And your mother? Did she know about the affair?" Something flickered across Derek's face. "My mother was protective of me. She may have suspected something, but I never told her anything specific." Lies. Detective Reeves could smell them, but proving it was another matter. This is where innocent people go to prison, where evidence gets twisted, where the truth becomes whatever the most powerful person in the room says it is. Comment below if you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do. And subscribe, because the next twist is going to show you how close Marcus came to losing everything. In another room, Marcus sat alone, still wearing clothes soaked in Nia's blood. He hadn't asked for a lawyer, hadn't asked for anything except to know if the baby was okay. "She is," Detective Reeves said, entering. Healthy. In the NICU for observation, but she's going to make it. Marcus broke down. Full body-shaking sobs. Real grief looks different than performed grief. Detective Reeves had learned to tell the difference. Tell me what happened, she said gently. And Marcus told her everything. The abusive marriage. Nia's plans to leave. The secret about the baby. The baby's mine, he said quietly. We did a DNA test 3 weeks ago. Nia was going to tell Derek after she left. She was scared of what he'd do. Do you have proof of this DNA test? It's in my email. I can show you. Detective Reeves pulled it up on his phone. Sure enough, a paternity test from a private lab. 99.9% probability that Marcus was the father. This changed everything. Did Derek know? I don't think so. But his mother, Mrs. Bryant, she'd been following Nia. Watching her. Nia was terrified of her. Why didn't you call the police? Get a restraining order. Against a Bryant? Do you know who they are in this city? They have connections everywhere. Lawyers, judges, politicians. Nia didn't think anyone would believe her. And looking at the situation now, the wealthy, respected family versus the dead woman and her lover, Detective Reeves understood why. While Detective Reeves was interrogating Marcus, something was happening behind the scenes. Derek's lawyers were already working. Phone calls to the district attorney. Quiet conversations with the chief of police. Reminders of campaign donations and political favors owed. By 9 a.m., the narrative was already shifting. The morning news reported, pregnant woman killed in love, triangle gone wrong. Social media exploded with speculation. And in holding, Marcus watched his entire life collapse in real time. But Detective Reeves wasn't done. She went back to the apartment, looked at everything again. The gun, registered to Mrs. Bryant. Her fingerprints. Her gun. The bullets from Mrs. Bryant's gun. The timeline. Mrs. Bryant arrived first. Was alone with Nia for 16 minutes before Marcus entered. The 911 call. Made by a neighbor who heard gunshots. Not by Marcus or Mrs. Bryant. And then there was Buddy. The dog had been in the apartment during the shooting. And according to the neighbor who called 911, Buddy had barked nonstop at Mrs. Bryant, not Marcus. Dogs don't lie. Detective Reeves muttered to herself. She pulled up the building's security footage again, watched it frame by frame. And that's when she saw it. A detail so small she'd almost missed it. At 11:52 p.m., when Mrs. Bryant entered the building, she carried her purse in her right hand. But at 12:47 a.m., when she was escorted out in handcuffs, the purse was in her left hand. And it was heavier. She brought the gun specifically for this. Planned it. Premeditated murder. But Derek's lawyers were good. By noon, they'd worked out a deal with the district attorney. Mrs. Bryant would plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter instead of first-degree murder. She'd claimed she walked in on Marcus attacking Nia, grabbed the gun to defend her, and it went off accidentally. Accidental. Detective Reeves was furious. She shot her 5 times. 3 times, the DA corrected. 2 bullets missed. And in the heat of the moment, with adrenaline. This is garbage and you know it. What I know is that Mrs. Bryant is 72 years old with no criminal record. A jury will see a frightened mother trying to protect her family. And Marcus, the actual father of the baby, will be charged as an accomplice unless he agrees to testify that he and the victim were planning to extort the Bryant family. Detective Reeves felt sick. This was how justice died. Not in darkness, but in broad daylight, signed by lawyers and approved by politicians. I won't be part of this. Then you'll be transferred off the case. And she was. By 3 p.m., Detective Reeves was reassigned. A different detective, one more willing to follow orders, took over. The narrative was set. Mrs. Bryant, tragic accident. Marcus, suspect in a failed extortion scheme. Nia, a woman who'd made bad choices. Case closed. But Detective Reeves had spent 23 years building connections of her own, and she wasn't done fighting. What nobody knew, what even Detective Reeves didn't know yet, was that Nia had been recording everything. 3 weeks before her death, she'd installed a hidden camera app on her phone, set it to automatically back up to the cloud whenever she felt threatened. The phone had been damaged in the shooting, declared evidence, locked away, but the cloud backup, that was still active, and it had captured everything. Mrs. Bryant entering the apartment, the entire conversation, the confession about checking medical records, the moment she pulled the gun, Marcus bursting through the door, trying to save Nia. All of it. The problem was access. The phone was evidence. The cloud account required Nia's password. And legally, without a warrant specifically for cloud data, the defense couldn't access it. But Marcus knew the password, because Nia had whispered it to him 3 weeks ago. If anything happens to me, check the cloud. Password, Marcus Starr 2024. While Marcus sat in a cell, facing charges that could put him away for 20 years. While Mrs. Bryant prepared for a trial she'd already won. While Derek collected life insurance money and planned his next move. A backup file sat in a server somewhere in California. Waiting. A digital ghost of a woman who tried to escape. One last piece of evidence that could change everything. If only someone knew to look for it. This is how systems fail. Not through evil, but through convenience. Through powerful people making calls. Through prosecutors who care more about conviction rates than truth. Through detectives who get reassigned when they ask too many questions. But here's what Derek and his lawyers forgot. Truth doesn't care about power. And the dead have ways of speaking that the living never expect. Marcus's trial was set for October 15th. 63 days after Nia died in his arms. 63 days of sitting in a cell, replaying that night over and over. 63 days of watching the news paint him as a homewrecker, a criminal, a man who'd gotten an innocent woman killed. His public defender was fresh out of law school, overwhelmed, and already talking about plea deals. They're offering 15 years if you plead guilty to conspiracy and attempted extortion, she said during their meeting. Given the evidence against you, I think you should seriously consider. I didn't do anything wrong. I understand you believe that, but the jury is going to see photos of you and the victim together, messages planning secret meetings, you at the scene covered in her blood. Because I was trying to save her. I believe you. But belief isn't the same as reasonable doubt. Marcus leaned back, exhausted. What about Mrs. Bryant? She's the one who pulled the trigger. She's taking a plea deal. 8 years for involuntary manslaughter. With good behavior, she'll be out in 4 years. For killing Nia and her baby. The baby lived. Because doctors saved her. Not because Mrs. Bryant showed mercy. His lawyer sighed. I know this isn't fair, but fair isn't how the system works. It's about what we can prove. And right now, the evidence favors their narrative. Marcus put his head in his hands. He'd lost everything. Nia was gone. His daughter, because she was his daughter, no matter what anyone said, was being raised by Derek as a Bryant. His reputation was destroyed. His life was over. Unless. The phone, Marcus said suddenly. Nia's phone. Did anyone check her cloud storage? Her phone was analyzed. Nothing incriminating was found. Not the phone. The cloud. She backed everything up automatically. If we can access it, we need her password. I have it. His lawyer stopped. You have her cloud password? She gave it to me. 3 weeks before she died. Said if anything happened to her, I should check it. Why didn't you mention this before? Because I've been in shock. Because I've been sitting in a cell trying to process that the woman I love is dead and everyone thinks I killed her. For the first time, his lawyer looked interested. If there's evidence on that cloud account, recordings, messages, anything that contradicts the prosecution's narrative, it could change everything. So how do we access it? I'll file a motion for digital discovery. But Marcus, she hesitated. Even if we find something, the Bryants have resources we don't. They've been controlling this narrative from day one. Then it's time someone took control back. While Marcus's lawyer filed motions, Detective Reeves was conducting her own investigation. Off the books. Using vacation days. She'd been a cop long enough to know when a case smelled wrong. And this case reeked. She started with Buddy. The dog had been taken to a shelter after the shooting. Detective Reeves went to visit him, brought treats, spent time earning his trust. And she noticed something interesting. When she showed Buddy photos of different people, Marcus, Derek, Mrs. Bryant, the dog's reactions were distinct. Marcus, tail wag, relaxed posture. Derek, ears back, nervous. Mrs. Bryant, immediate growling, defensive stance. You know who the real threat is, don't you, boy? She murmured. She also tracked down Nia's obstetrician, the one Mrs. Bryant claimed to have gotten information from about the pregnancy dates. Did Mrs. Bryant ever contact you? Detective Reeves asked. No, and even if she did, I wouldn't give out patient information. HIPAA violation. So how did she know about the conception dates? I have no idea. Unless... The doctor paused. We did have a break-in about 2 months ago. Nothing was stolen, but some files were accessed. We reported it, but the police said it was probably just kids. Detective Reeves felt her pulse quicken. Do you still have a report number? She did. And when Detective Reeves pulled that report, she found something interesting. The break-in occurred on June 3rd, the same day Mrs. Bryant had a doctor's appointment in the same building. Coincidence? Detective Reeves didn't believe in coincidences. This is what real detective work looks like. Not dramatic confessions or surprise witnesses. Just patient, persistent digging until the pieces start fitting together. IT took 2 weeks, but Marcus's lawyer finally got the court order to access Nia's cloud storage. And what they found was explosive. 17 recordings. Conversations between Nia and Derek showing the abuse, the control, the threats. Conversations between Nia and Mrs. Bryant showing the harassment, the surveillance. And most damning of all, the recording from the night of the murder. Mrs. Bryant's voice, crystal clear. You're going to leave my son. You're going to run off with your little boyfriend, take the baby, who may or may not even be a Bryant, and destroy everything I've built. Nia, please, think about what you're doing. Mrs. Bryant, I'm thinking about my son's reputation. The sound of the gun being pulled. Nia, shooting me won't fix anything. Mrs. Bryant, no, but it will stop you from ruining him. 3 gunshots. A pause. Marcus's voice. Oh my God. Nia. 2 more shots. Wild, panicked, as Mrs. Bryant tried to shoot Marcus too. Then chaos. Sirens. Crying. The recording ended. Marcus's lawyer played it for him in the prison meeting room. By the end, they were both crying. This changes everything, she whispered. The recordings went public on a Tuesday. Marcus's lawyer released them to the media, every major news outlet, every social media platform, everywhere at once. By Wednesday morning, the entire narrative had flipped. Bryant family cover-up. Mother killed pregnant daughter-in-law. Framed her lover. Wealthy family bought silence. Secret recordings reveal premeditated murder. Innocent man nearly convicted. How power and money almost destroyed justice. The public outrage was immediate and massive. The district attorney who'd approved Mrs. Bryant's plea deal suddenly found his political career in jeopardy. The chief of police who'd reassigned Detective Reeves faced calls for resignation. And Derek watched his carefully constructed world crumble in real time. By Thursday, Mrs. Bryant's plea deal was revoked. New charges: first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, conspiracy. By Friday, Marcus was released from jail, all charges dropped. And by Saturday, Detective Reeves was back on the case, this time with full authority to investigate everything. This is what truth looks like when it finally breaks free. Comment below if you've ever been vindicated after everyone doubted you. And if this story moved you, share it. Because somewhere, right now, someone is in Nia's situation, trapped, scared, believing no one will help. Let them know they're not alone. But the story wasn't over. Because Detective Reeves had one more thread to pull. Derek. He'd claimed ignorance. Said he didn't know what his mother was planning. Said he was just a grieving husband trying to make sense of tragedy. But Detective Reeves didn't buy it. She went through his phone records, his emails, his financial transactions, and she found it. A payment to a private investigator, $50,000, made 3 weeks before the murder. The investigator's report included everything: Nia's movements, Marcus's schedule, detailed surveillance photos. but also included something else. A recommendation. Subject appears to be planning to leave with male friend Marcus. Suggests waiting until after baby is born to avoid custody complications. Recommend intervention. Intervention. That word kept appearing in the investigator's notes. And in one email exchange between Derek and the investigator, dated 2 days before the murder. Investigator, do you want me to arrange the intervention we discussed? Derek, no. I'll handle it through family channels. Family channels. His mother. Detective Reeves brought this to the prosecutor. He knew, she said. Maybe not the exact plan, but he knew something was going to happen. He pointed his mother at Nia like a loaded weapon. Can we prove he explicitly told her to kill Nia? No, but we can prove he knew she was dangerous, that he gave her information about Nia's movements, and that he did nothing to stop what happened. Accessory after the fact. Maybe conspiracy. It's something. And it was enough. Derek was arrested on October 29th, in his expensive office, surrounded by his expensive lawyers, wearing his expensive suit. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, he looked afraid. 6 months later, Mrs. Bryant's trial was short. The recordings spoke for themselves. She was convicted of first-degree murder, sentenced to life without parole. In her final statement, she showed no remorse. I did what any mother would do. I protected my son. The judge's response was cold. You didn't protect anyone. You destroyed a life, orphaned a child, and corrupted justice. Your sentence reflects that. Derek's trial took longer. His lawyers argued he had no direct knowledge of his mother's plans. But the jury saw through it. They saw the surveillance reports he'd commissioned. They saw the email about intervention through family channels. They saw a man who'd been so obsessed with control, with reputation, with his perfect image, that he'd sacrificed a real person to maintain it. Guilty on all counts. 30 years. Marcus stood in family court, holding his daughter. She was 14 months old now. Healthy, happy, unaware of the tragedy that had brought her into this world. The judge looked at him kindly. Mr. Thompson, given the DNA evidence and the circumstances surrounding this case, I'm granting you full custody of your daughter. The Bryant family's petition is denied. It had taken a year, 3 court battles, and more money than Marcus had, but he'd won. His daughter would grow up knowing the truth about her mother, about Nia's strength, her courage, her love, not the lies the Bryants had tried to spread. After the hearing, Detective Reeves met him outside. Congratulations, she said. Thank you for everything. If you hadn't kept investigating, I was just doing my job. You were doing more than that. You were fighting for someone who couldn't fight for herself anymore. Detective Reeves nodded. What will you tell her when she's old enough to ask about her mother? Marcus looked down at his daughter, who was grabbing at his tie, giggling. The truth, he said, that her mother loved her more than anything, that she tried to escape an impossible situation, that she was brave until the very end. He paused, and that love, real love, is never about control. It's about freedom. 3 years later, Marcus started a foundation, Nia's Voice, dedicated to helping women escape abusive relationships, providing legal support, safe housing, counseling. The foundation used Nia's recordings as part of their awareness campaign. Her story, her real story, reached millions. And slowly, the narrative changed. People stopped seeing Nia as a victim who'd made mistakes. They saw her as a survivor who'd run out of time. They saw her as a woman who'd documented her abuse, who'd tried to protect her child, who'd fought until the very last moment. They saw her as human. Here's what Nia's story teaches us. 1. The people who look perfect from the outside might be suffering in ways you can't imagine. Check on your friends. Really check on them. Ask the hard questions. 2. Abuse isn't always visible. It doesn't always leave bruises. Sometimes it's control disguised as care, surveillance disguised as concern, possession disguised as love. 3. If you're in danger, document everything. Tell someone you trust. Leave a trail. Because the truth has a way of surfacing, even when powerful people try to bury it. 4. Dogs don't lie. Children don't lie. When someone's behavior changes around a specific person, pay attention. Our instincts exist for a reason. 5. Justice isn't always immediate. Sometimes it takes time, takes fighting, takes people who refuse to give up even when the system is rigged against them. And finally, your life is worth fighting for. Your freedom is worth fighting for. No one, not your partner, not your family, not anyone, has the right to control you, hurt you, or take away your voice. If Nia's story resonated with you, I need you to do something. Share this video, not for views, not for likes, but because somewhere right now, someone is living Nia's nightmare. And maybe, just maybe, this story will give them the courage to document, to speak up, to leave. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, there are resources. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. They can help. You don't have to face this alone. Subscribe to this channel because these stories matter. These voices matter. And the more we talk about what happens behind closed doors, the harder it becomes for abusers to hide. Drop a comment. What's one thing you learned from Nia's story? What's one change you'll make in how you see the relationships around you? Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being part of a community that refuses to let these stories be silenced. Until next time, this is True Crime Files HQ, reminding you, the most dangerous place you can be is silent. Statistically, every 9 seconds in the U.S., a woman is assaulted or beaten. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner violence. Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. Text START to 88788 for confidential support. Rest in peace to all the Nias who didn't make it out. Strength to all the Marcuzes still fighting for justice. And hope for everyone still trying to escape. I'm your host, Kristen, and as always, until next time.